Every once in a great while, I find myself watching a film that simultaneously lifts and sinks me deeper into myself. Like every cell of my being has been waiting to be charged at this very moment, by this very alchemy on screen. A force inside me recognizes a force inside the film and shouts, "Hello! I know you." Sometimes that film grins and waves back. It knows me too.
Well, hi there.
Dr. Sleep is such a film. My old friend, it's so nice to finally meet you. I've been feeling an intense affinity with all of Mike Flanagan's work since I first saw his 2017 adaptation of Stephen King's novel, Gerald's Game. Horror has always been my space to process traumatic experiences in my life. But the horror genre doesn't always make room to process its own traumas internally. Flanagan's horror is all about the processing. His filmography has centered stories of child abuse, intimate partner violence, intergenerational trauma, and PTSD. He employs the effective, somatic dressings of horror for his wounded characters with an uncommon intimacy, complexity, and reverence. Flanagan understands horror on an elemental level. Its smells and crunchings and yearnings. When I heard Flanagan was approved to adapt Stephen King's sequel to his 1970s novel The Shining, Dr. Sleep, I read the book in anticipation for the film. I wasn't obsessed with either King or Kubrick's Shining, at least not compared to the fan culture that the universe continues to cultivate, as the 2012 documentary Room 237 playfully explores. Kubrick's 1980 adaptation of The Shining lives stubbornly in my mind because of its hypnotic presence, and I've read and loved enough King to get why Flanagan loves him too. We're all childhood trauma bedfellows. But it was Flanagan I was following into this labyrinth, not his predecessors. All of Flanagan's interviews leading up to Dr. Sleep's 2019 release addressed the elephant in the room. King hated Kubrick's adaptation, but audiences and critics have always heralded the film as genius.
And we were fortunate that King was always very specific about why he was not happy with Kubrick's adaptation. You know, he's been very, very specific about what upsets him when people handle his material in a way he doesn't like. And so the mission was always, how do you protect Stephen King's characters and his intentions for the emotional arc of the story, while celebrating Stanley Kubrick as the genius that he is, the genius that he was, and celebrating The Shining, you know, for this incredible cultural phenomenon that it is. And that was always kind of the two lenses that we would approach every scene.
While very much its own story, Dr. Sleep takes place in the Shining universe. When Flanagan's film returns either in memory or in person to the Overlook Hotel and the ghosts that inhabit it, he's going to summon Kubrick's images and sounds in order to do it. But King's characters, relationships, and the world he built for them to occupy are just as integral to the story's telling. Flanagan, a devout fan of both Kubrick and King, was the right person to reconcile these disparate creators. His Dr. Sleep is a beautiful chimera, a hybrid of all three souls: lion's head, goat's body, and snake's tail. Dr. Sleep is somehow more than the sum of its parts. The basic story of The Shining, book and film, follows Jack Torrance, a recovering alcoholic who takes his wife Wendy and 5-year-old son Danny to the Overlook Hotel, where dark psychic forces are drawn to Danny's shine and drive Jack to attempt familicide. Jack dies, and Wendy and Danny survive. In Dr. Sleep, Dan is all grown up, and the story explores the long-term consequences of his traumas at the Overlook, the contours of his psychic powers, and introduces a new protagonist, Abra Stone, who also shines.
Abracadabra.
The monster in The Shining is a place.
There's a place that's dangerous for people like us.
The place you told me about? The hungry place?
Yeah, that's right.
In Dr. Sleep, it's a person, the True Knot, an ancient species that eat well and live long by preying on children that shine and eating their life force, their steam.
None can compare with my wild Irish rose.
The thing about Kubrick's Shining is that it's been imprinted onto the minds of many, whether or not they've watched it. What's always stayed with me is the winding aerial shot of the Torrances as they drive up the mountain to the Overlook and their certain doom. Those crushing bars of the main title score, like a funeral dirge, oppressively marching them forward. Flanagan knows how these moments enjoy a life beyond the film. And when it serves Dr. Sleep, he works in what he calls direct quotes of Kubrick's shots and soundscapes. But it's how Flanagan uses Kubrick's filmic language, its connotations and logics, and transforms them for this new story of Abra, Dan, and the True Knots that distinguishes Dr. Sleep as more than just a sequel. Dr. Sleep opens in homage to The Shining, from high above. But what we see below is a tree line, a campsite. In my mind, I see the Torrances driving up the mountain. On the screen, I meet the main villain of this story, Rose the Hat.
Well, hi there. Where did you find those?
I know all the secret places. Do you want one?
As she lures a special girl to feed on her essence. The use of the aerial shot isn't just a nod to Kubrick. Rose, an ancient predator, has a unique magic that allows her to travel great distances, to astral project when hunting her prey. Flanagan extends Kubrick's aerial shot from atmospheric dread to the literal point of view of Rose. When Dr. Sleep eventually does repeat the drive up the mountain from The Shining, it feels like Rose was following the Torrance family the whole time, before Kubrick even knew her, or King for that matter. Her essence was cosmically linked with the Overlooks. Flanagan also weaves Kubrick's soundscape into Dr. Sleep. The music is often directly quoted from The Shining, from the main title to the eerie jazz standards of Jack Hilton, Al Bowley, and Henry Hall. Kubrick's 1930s soundtrack heightened the temporal entrapment of the hotel, and Dr. Sleep binds its story to this place of sickly amber through these ghostly croons. But even more compellingly, Flanagan lifts the heartbeat, which occurs in The Shining only a couple of times, as the most prominent instrument in his soundscape. Whenever Dan, Abra, Rose, or the True Knot family engage their powers in Dr. Sleep, that heartbeat is a relentless drum. The heartbeat is typically a sound of fear in horror, It mimics the blood rush of adrenaline we experience under extreme duress, our own pulses pounding in our ears. But in Dr. Sleep, the heartbeat works to animate what it feels like to be a hypersensitive, magical being. To be attuned to those around you so intensely that you feel their heartbeats too. What has always drawn me to horror in general, but King in particular, is his recurring exploration of childhood traumas and the lasting impact on the lives of people who survive them. Violence for King isn't gratuitous. It's not for the pleasure of voyeurs. Violence is a reality of living in this world. You can't shelter kids from it because kids experience it firsthand. Their abusers often live in their homes and control their realities. And once children survive the violence and grow up and are technically safe, they're forever shaped by it. The abuser's marks continue to burrow and tear at their minds and affect their behaviors, their life choices. It's clear that this topic from King draws Flanagan to him as well, because much of Flanagan's work has centered on these same themes. Like King, he mines trauma for truth, not for the pleasure of outsiders to look at a horrific car crash from a comfortable distance, but for the solace of those who've endured similar violences, to process the messy darkness they've been saddled with for life. This is the aspect of Dr. Sleep that moves me as a survivor of emotional and physical abuse. The True Knot operate perfectly as metaphorical magnifications of abusers, narcissists, and psychopaths. There are very real people in the world, far too many, that seek out the vulnerable to satisfy their own needs. Sometimes they're strangers, like Rose, moving in a caravan, snatching children from under their parents' noses. Mostly, they're closer, like Jack, harming those under their own roof. But it's actually the shine of Dan and Abra, the smell that attracts the True Knot to their food, that is the dimension in abusive dynamics uniquely explored in this film. Dan, Abra, and all of the past and future victims of the True Knot are different from other people. The equivalent in our world are empaths, sensitives, people that walk into a room and can feel waves of energy and information crash over them, who can sense in every gesture, shape, smell, and sound what's actually churning beneath the surface. I identify as an empath. I was an incredibly sensitive child. I always knew what was going on in the adult world. And while I intuitively used my empathic gift to survive my chaotic social reality, I also often dissociated because it hurts to feel everything everyone else feels around you all of the time. As I grew older, like Dan, I found ways to dull my heightened emotions and the scars I bore. Drugs, alcohol, sex, anything to numb feelings too big, to muffle sounds too loud. Just like Dan, being empathic was not only personally painful for me, but it was also dangerous. Your shine attracts those hungry for your light. Dan's mentor, Dick, explains at the beginning of Dr. Sleep.
The world's a hungry place. And the darkest things are the hungriest, and they'll eat what shines. Swarm it like mosquitoes or leeches.
And Rose agrees.
Honey, it's the special ones that taste best.
I've often asked myself, as abusers and narcissists have found me again and again, is it me? Do I have a sign on my face that says, victimize me? I've since learned that, yes, these types of predators are drawn to people like me, but not because I'm weak. It's because I'm open. This quality that sensitive people have is the purest drug for abusers. Wrenching pain out of an empath makes them tastier.
Pain purifies steam. Fear too, so you understand. Oh, so much terror. All your life, huh? Delicious.
But the same light that makes empaths vulnerable is also what makes us strong.
Maybe there's more of them or things like them or worse, but there's more people like you, too. People who stand. I told you, when I first met you, I told you that you should hide. That you should keep your head down. Keep your shine out of sight. But I was wrong. Shine on, Aberstone. You shine on.
Since Dan escaped the Overlook, the ghosts of that rotting place still come for his shine. The bathtub lady is a particularly disturbing visitor. But Dan doesn't have to face this completely alone. Dick teaches him how to make boxes in his mind that lock each of the evil residents of the Overlook inside. In adulthood, Dan gains more strategies to arm himself against the many dimensions of the hell he's psychically tethered to restore and to heal, so that one day he may help a future soul in need. While he initially resists the call,
What the hell am I supposed to do?
It seems to me you grew up fine, son. But you still owe a debt. Pay it.
he eventually plays his part in the cyclical story of the universe. Abra's fate is entangled with the true knot, but her actions and reactions interrupt a simple monster-victim binary. When she first experiences a boy being murdered in her waking dream, Abra's impulse is an immediate counterattack.
I want to find them. Stop them. Because I think they've done this to a lot of other kids too. So I have to do something, right?
While Dan's is to withdraw and hide.
Abra, go home. Think about your school. Think about your parents. Think about the rest of your life. Don't chase these people. Don't aggravate them. Whatever you do, don't attract their attention. Don't shine.
Both reactions to violence are normal survival tactics. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. There is no right or wrong way to survive threats to one's bodily, mental, or spiritual autonomy. Resilience is as varied as people are. And Abra's empathy manifests in active resistance. Once Rose smells the enormity of Abra's power, she locks onto her obsessively.
She's the great white whale. And I want her. I want her. I fucking want her.
Her need to conquer, to squash, to devour is laid bare. Rose and Abra's first psychic battle is alive with kinetic charge. From Rose's flight and descent, the heartbeat of her focus, confident in her quest as she swims through space, her twisted bliss in breaching the borders of Abra's selfhood, her shock and growing terror as she finds herself caught in Abra's calculated trap, her fruitless struggles to keep her feet on the ground as Abra's defenses push her out of her mind, and the chaotic tumbling as she is jettisoned forcefully back into her body. The first time I saw this sequence, I was floored by its figurative power, this visceral choreography of the pushes and pulls sensitives feel when predators target them, and the absolute rapture I felt in Abra's strength and even unsettling defiance. The cinematographic magnetism is repeated when Abra draws Dan to her rescue after she's kidnapped.
Help.
The frame slants, and Dan falls forward, his essence urgently summoned to Abra's aid thousands of miles away.
Hi.
Just as some energetic tethers can be dangerous, healthy cords between shiny people can be life-saving. The impact of surrogate parental relationships are repeated throughout Dr. Sleep, and their parallels work to evoke harmonies and sometimes surprising dissonances. Dick was Dan's mentor, where his biological mother, despite the enormity of her love, couldn't quite understand or help him. Now, Dan is Abra's mentor, where her parents can't quite understand or help her. And Rose acts as mother to Andy. She targets her, seduces her, and names her.
What is tied cannot be untied.
Despite the definitive lines drawn between Dr. Sleep's empty devils and shiny protagonists, the True Knot's genuine family bonds blur these demarcations.
You and your friend? Not my friend, that's my family.
These are mirrored stories of found families, of special people, broken people, being lifted out of their isolation and promised protection and love. Towards the end of the film, Rose says to Abra,
You remind me of myself. I can really see it now. You've got a darkness in you, dear. I think the only difference between you and me is time.
And it's true. Abra derives real pleasure in retribution.
I hope that hurts. A lot.
But I think the crucial difference between Abra and Rose, Dan and Andy, is what kind of family they were lucky or unlucky enough to have found.
Wakey, wakey.
When Dan finds community, he finds purpose. He becomes an orderly at a hospice and discovers his ability to ease the fear of those at death's door. The first time his gift is activated in this way, he hesitates.
I shouldn't be here. Let me go get you some.
No. You're exactly where you should be.
Dan eases him gracefully to peace. Over the years, his work as a death doula continues, and he acquires his name both old
What's up, Doc?
and new.
You're a strange type of doctor.
I told you I'm not a doctor.
Oh, I think you are. Dr. Sleep.
He quietly performs this empathic labor all deserve, but many never get. After they defeat Rose, the Overlook is still awake and hungrier than ever. Abra pleads with Dan to escape with her. And for the first time, without hesitation, he doesn't run.
I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Dan did not live a peaceful life. He suffered constant terror as a child, battled personal demons as an adult, and has to return to the scene of his deepest trauma before he's finished. In the end, as he sits in the boiler room of the Overlook, watching that ugly place be purified in flames, his mother comes to him and gives him the same peace he gifted others. This is an act of cinematic closure for King, who burned his Overlook down in his first novel, but Kubrick left standing at the end of his film. Flanagan acts as a death doula for the Overlook and the Torrance family, and like Dan, is exactly where he's supposed to be.
In my opinion, the best way to adapt Stephen King is to make sure you never lose sight of his humanism. It's something that permeates his writing in a profound way. It's really kind of strikes at what the heart of Stephen King is for me, which is just such an empathetic voice, telling stories in such a dark world. It's really something.
When Rose invades Abra's mind, we see the sum of herself as drawers in a library, filled with the reference cards of every experience she's ever had. We're all libraries, of everything that's ever happened to us, of everything we've ever done. I imagine Flanagan's library shares more than a few books with mine. That is why I'm drawn to his work. That is why he was able to make this beautiful, impossible hybrid. For all those steamy people, drawn to the shine of horror, the empaths that have survived the unimaginable and look to stories for catharsis, Dr. Sleep is for us.
When shadows fall and trees whisper day is ending, my thoughts are ever wending home. When crickets call, my heart is forever yearning once more to be returning home. When the hills conceal the setting sun, stars begin a-peeping one by one. Night covers all, and though fortune may forsake,